The hotel shuttle dropped Marcy off at the Ambassador Hotel. The elegant hotel was one of the best in the city with impeccable service. A bellboy loaded her bags on a cart, gave her a small stub receipt, and welcomed her to the hotel. A doorman tipped his hat in welcome and opened the large, impressive brass door for Marcy, with the bellboy following a respectable distance behind. Marcy ambled towards the front desk while casually looking around to see if Rick was waiting for her, as she had requested in her letter. While she saw a few people relaxing in the comfortable, upholstered lobby chairs and sofas that were arranged throughout the spacious lobby, she didn't see her loving husband anywhere. She was a bit apprehensive about how Rick would behave towards her when they finally reconnected, as he was quite angry with her on the phone when he spoke to her while she was in Trey's bed in Colombia several weeks before. While he might have been initially angry, she had released him from his marital bounds during her 6-week trip and was confident that their neighbor Leslie thoroughly rocked his world during the past month and a half. Leslie and her husband were swingers, and Leslie had an undeniable allure that turned heads wherever she went. Marcy often saw men in the neighborhood openly gawk at Leslie when she passed by. Leslie also made it abundantly clear that she wanted Rick in a most carnal way. Marcy hoped that Rick enjoyed the 6-week hiatus from their marriage, but he didn't want to continue having intimacy with Leslie, as Marcy planned on terminating their mutual hall passes now that she was home. She was certain that rekindling her love with Rick would be overly complicated if another woman, especially one as hot as Leslie, was involved. Marcy felt bad when she realized that she hadn't actually spoken to Rick since the angry phone call she received while in bed with Trey at the hotel in Colombia. The team had been quite busy during the day with many surgeries scheduled during the day. She felt sorry for the poor people of South America who traveled from far away to receive treatment from skilled U.S. doctors. On the few days that the team had time to sightsee, and Marcy and Trey weren't shacked up in bed, she had taken some pictures of some sights, including a tour of Mount Montserrat, and texted some of the better photos to Rick with texts about what they were doing and seeing. She was a bit miffed that Rick never bothered to even acknowledge her messages. Maybe he was still hurt. Marcy, however, was confident that Rick loved her completely. While it may take a while to salve his wounds, Marcy knew that they would eventually find their way together and have an even stronger marriage as they entered the next chapter of their lives as empty nesters. She fully intended for them to stay together for the rest of their lives. Experiencing another man for the past 6 weeks certainly helped Marcy better appreciate her strong and loyal husband. While Trey was indeed a good lover in a technical way, always seeming to test her boundaries, she found that there was simply no love between the two of them. Once their affair was out in the open, she found Trey's arrogance and rudeness to be a turn-off rather than the turn-on she originally experienced. Trey was demanding in bed and seemed to enjoy demeaning her, especially after he knew that Rick had learned of their affair. Trey coerced her into doing things that she never did for Rick, and the more debased, the more of a charge Trey experienced. Trey also enjoyed verbally mocking Rick and her marriage to him, making her answer questions like, "Who do you like more, mine or that tiny one that your husband has?" Under Trey's pressure, she uttered words that she didn't fully believe. At first, such comments revved her motor, but over time they irritated her and simply angered her off. When she asked Trey to stop with the verbal disrespect, he seemed to enjoy making even more comments and taking them to even worse levels of disdain, making it sound like Rick was a wimpy, humiliated husband who would be happy to serve Trey as some sort of sexual servant. Marcy ceased complaining, hoping that Trey would lessen the verbal crap, but to no avail. By the end of the trip, Marcy felt used, demeaned, and debased. Waiting for their flight at the Bogota airport, Marcy told Trey that she was ending their affair as she was going to rededicate herself to Rick and her marriage. Trey just shrugged like he could have cared less and said, "You were a damn good woman, but I was getting tired of our fling, so I think splitting up is definitely for the best. Enjoy your humiliated husband." He even traded seats with Penny so that he wouldn't have to sit next to Marcy on the long flight home. Marcy didn't know how she was so enamored by Trey for such a long time. Now, She saw him as just a narcissistic jerk. She was quite relieved that she wouldn't have to sit next to him on the plane ride home. Instead, she sat next to Penny on the trip back. Both of them were exhausted, so they were subdued, talking little during the long flight. Penny confided that Rick had called her room and that he knew she was cheating on her husband Josh with one of the doctors. Fortunately, Rick promised not to tell Josh about Penny's dalliances. Penny knew that Josh wouldn't tolerate cheating. She was glad that she dodged such a close call, and she was actually able to enjoy the rest of her stay and affair in Bogota. While they were waiting for their checked luggage, a young woman walked up to Penny and asked, "Are you Penny Washington?" Penny answered, "Yes," and seemed somewhat confused until the woman handed her a large manila envelope and said, "You have been served. Have a nice day." Marcy looked at the envelope like it was a venomous snake as the young woman took a step back and snapped a picture of her holding the envelope. Penny was devastated and broke down crying. Marcy and other people who were on the trip tried to console her and reassured her with words like, "It will be okay. Maybe you can talk it over with him and get him to forgive you," and the like. All the while, almost everyone knew that Penny's marriage to Josh was toast. Penny eventually calmed down, even though her calls to Josh were being blocked. Not knowing what awaited her at home, Penny gathered her luggage and took an Uber to her parents' home, who lived in the same town as she and Josh. During the wait for the luggage, Marcy found herself glancing around, seeing if any other process server-looking people were in the vicinity, holding large envelopes waiting to ambush her and serve her with her own set of divorce papers. While it took a while to get their luggage, having already gone through customs at the previous airport where they changed planes, no other process servers appeared. Marcy was now confident that Rick had calmed down from his angry phone call and would meet her at the hotel in just a short while. Marcy couldn't wait to rekindle her love and marriage with Rick, the only man she'd ever loved. On her way to the hotel front desk, Marcy mused to herself on rekindling her love with Rick. She found that she missed and loved him now more than ever, and that she appreciated his strengths and shortcomings all the more, especially after spending 6 weeks in Trey's bed. Once she and Rick both got clean STD tests, she longed for the familiarity and comfort of Rick's embrace, hoping he would still welcome her back. The memories of her sordid affair with Dr. Trey made her feel cheap, like a discarded piece of meat, or a washed-up adult star who was forced to perform increasingly disgusting acts in order to survive. Shrugging these negative thoughts out of her mind, she put a smile on her face and looked forward to her reunion with Rick. She had secretly hoped that she'd find Rick in the lobby anxiously awaiting her return, but she hadn't spotted him by the time she reached the front desk. A young Hispanic clerk, dressed in a fine suit with a small gold badge identifying him as Jose Gomez Front Desk, looked up from his computer screen and smiled a dazzling set of perfectly white teeth, saying, "Welcome to the Ambassador Hotel. How may I be of service?" "Hi, I'm checking in. There should be a reservation for Marcy Weston," she said to the nice young man. The clerk smiled and typed on his keyboard. "Let's see. I have your reservation as being for one night, is that correct?" "Yes, just one night. I've got your room on the 10th floor with a cityscape view. It's really quite nice. How many key cards will you be needing?" "Well, I'm pretty sure my husband will be joining me, so you'd better give me 2 cards. "Okay, what credit card would you like to use to cover the room and for any incidentals during your stay?" Marcy reached into her purse and pulled out her Visa card, handing it to the clerk. "Here you go." "Thank you, ma'am. Let me take care of this and we'll get you up to your room. I see that our bellboy Steve already has your luggage and he will be happy to assist you up to your room." "Thank you. I do have a few bags, and my husband isn't here yet to give me a hand, so that would be great." The bellboy stationed a short distance away, waiting with the luggage cart ready to escort her up to her room. Her original plan was for Trey to drop her off, but the hotel shuttle seemed like a much better idea now that she had cut things off with Trey. Also, if Rick had been waiting in the lobby, Having Trey drop her off might really spoil what should have been a nice reunion. The clerk nodded as he inserted Marcy's Visa card into the reader and grabbed a couple of blank key cards to start getting the cards ready. He glanced at his screen and frowned. "I'm sorry, Ms. Weston, but that card has been declined. Do you have a different card that you'd like to use?" A pit formed in Marcy's stomach. She hadn't needed or used her credit cards in Bogota, with the Doctors Without Borders group picking up living expenses and Trey buying anything they needed when they were in town. She only brought 2 credit cards with her on the trip, her Visa and her Discover card. In fact, she left the credit cards and her passport in the room safe at the hotel to prevent them from being stolen. She wondered if someone had been able to steal her credit card number while she was away, something she'd have to talk to Rick about. "Sure. Do you take Discover card?" Marcy asked as she handed the clerk her Discover card and received her Visa card back in return. "Yes, ma'am. Let me run this card through and we'll have you up to your room in no time." By this time, another couple had approached the front desk to check in and were waiting behind Marcy. Once again, the clerk continued the check-in procedure and once again informed Marcy that the Discover card had also been declined. When asked if she had another card she'd like to try, Marcy found that she was somewhat embarrassed as the young couple in line appeared impatient, waiting behind someone who apparently couldn't pay for her room. Marcy replied to the clerk, "Those are the only 2 cards I have with me. I'm returning from being out of the country for 6 weeks, so something must have happened. Let me step out of line and call my husband so that I can figure out what happened." The clerk responded, "Very well. I hope everything works out for you. Please let me know if there is anything I can do to help." At which point, Marcy wandered over to a seating arrangement, and the young couple started their check-in process. The bellboy abandoned the cart with Marcy's luggage and grabbed a different cart to assist the young couple with their bags instead. In short order, Marcy had been dismissed by the hotel staff. Marcy retrieved her cell phone from her purse. She realized that she had turned it off during the flight and, during the commotion regarding Penny at the airport, had forgotten to turn the phone back on. She turned the phone on and entered her passcode once prompted, figuring she had likely missed many messages from Rick and others during her flight. She noticed that the phone had no new messages, so she clicked on the phone app and then pressed the icon next to the picture of Rick on her favorites screen. She noted that Trey also had a place on her favorites screen. She vowed to delete Trey's entry right after she talked to Rick. Instead of a ringtone, when she put the phone to her ear, Marcy heard an automatic voice message indicating that Rick's phone had been disconnected and was no longer in service. "What the hell?" Marcy thought as she pulled the phone away from her ear and stared at the screen. Just then, a man she had noticed sitting in one of the lobby chairs when she first entered the hotel approached her. "Excuse me, ma'am, but are you Marcy Weston?" Somewhat startled, she looked up at the man dressed in a nice suit with fear in her eyes. "Yes, I'm Marcy. Can I help you?" "No, ma'am, but I have something that your husband Rick wanted you to have," handing Marcy a large manila envelope. As soon as Marcy took the envelope, the man nodded and said, "Have a nice day," as he turned and headed towards the hotel exit. Marcy trembled as she held the envelope, but she somewhat relaxed as she recalled that the man didn't say the dreadful words, "You have been served," nor did he take a picture of her holding the envelope. Perhaps Rick had a fun surprise for her instead. Maybe he wanted to meet with her somewhere else. Suddenly, Marcy optimistically wanted to know the contents of the envelope and quickly walked down to the nearest upholstered chair in the lobby to see what was inside. Opening the envelope with anticipation, Marcy could tell that there was a typed letter in the large envelope along with a smaller, stiffer envelope. Taking a deep breath, she pulled out the letter and started reading. "Marcy, I'm no coward, but as a man, and as your husband, your flagrant disregard for our marriage and the vows we took broke my heart. You apparently justified your actions by concluding that I had a whirlwind affair with Deidre while we were in Iraq serving our country. I did not. I regret to admit that on one occasion, we behaved in a manner that would not pass the spouse test. This happened when we returned to base right after our convoy had been ambushed by insurgents. Deidre and I were lucky to avoid injury or death that day, unlike many of our comrades. Returning to base, we were hyped up on fear and adrenaline, happy to still be alive. After debriefing, I escorted Deidre back to her quarters, and as I was about to leave, she grabbed me in a strong hug, sobbing effusively, the emotions of the day overwhelming her. I consoled her, and she pulled my head down to her, kissing me passionately. Suddenly, we were making out like lust-filled teenagers, knowing full well that our emotions were getting the better of us. I regret that I didn't have more strength to resist her advances. However, we did not have penetrative intimacy. This unfortunate dalliance occurred in the heat of the moment, right after a very traumatic experience, unlike your carefully planned affairs. I want to state for the record that you are the only woman I have had intercourse with since we married over 20 years ago. I'm sure you cannot say the same. In addition to Trey, I know for a fact that you had an affair while I was away on assignment in Korea. Someone informed me that you were meeting a man at the Red Roof Inn across from the hospital. I know that you parked there due to construction, however. You routinely arrived hours before the start of your shift. I looked into your tryst by hiring a private investigator. The private investigator failed to identify your paramour, but you and I both know that you cheated on me. You only know how many other times you broke our vows. For some dumb reason, I decided to give you a pass on the Red Roof affair. I was away and you obviously had needs that you wanted someone else to fill. You were discreet and never flaunted the affair to me or anyone else. I also confirmed that you stopped the Red Roof affair as soon as I returned home, no longer arriving at the parking lot hours before your shift started. From your letter, I understand that you unilaterally changed our relationship so that one spouse can do whatever they like without getting the other spouse's approval or consent beforehand. Wow, what a great concept. I never did hook up with Leslie, as the thought of you somewhat gifting her to me turned my stomach. I did, however, invite her and Vincent over for dinner while you were gone. What a surprise to learn from Leslie that you had already been having an affair with Dr. Trey and wanted us to join in the swinger lifestyle. Also, you should know that Leslie thought you had told me about your activities and that she was upset to learn that you did not talk to me beforehand. She and Vincent both said that cheating was not part of the open marriage lifestyle. Seems that if you want to be a swinger, the first rule is to be completely open and honest with your spouse. Needless to say, Leslie and Vincent are not very happy with you and they don't condone your self-serving behavior. I guess with the new rules, you didn't feel you needed to run these things past me before making your decision. It would have been nice to know that we are a couple of swingers, even though you're the only one currently having intimacy outside of our marriage. Knowing that Colombia is a dangerous place and that the marvelous Dr. Trey was taking such good care of you, I took the liberty of paying off and then canceling all of our joint credit cards. Wouldn't want some jerk taking advantage of you now, would I? Remember several years ago when we met with the estate planning attorney for help with our wills and other documents? I had almost forgotten that she also prepared a durable power of attorneys for each of us that we both signed. After having our little chat while you were in Trey's hotel room, I decided to change my life insurance beneficiaries from you to the kids. I found the POAs when I was rummaging through our files. Guess what? The POAs were still in effect and worked like a charm. I really like this unilateral decision-making relationship. Thanks. I used the power of attorney that you signed just once, if you don't mind. After using it, I shredded both of the POAs so they can't be used again. You're welcome. You see, I needed the POA to sell our house and automobiles since they were jointly owned by the two of us. Don't worry, I upheld my fiduciary obligations and got decent prices on your behalf. Remember that young couple, Rod and Emily Wellman, that loved our house and were interested in it because they were running out of room for their growing family? Guess what? They own and live in our old home now. They couldn't be happier. I told them that you were out of the country on an extended assignment, so you couldn't make it to the closing and therefore couldn't express your fond wishes that they enjoy the house as much as we did. Stop by. I'm sure they'd love to thank you. The car sales were even easier. I just went to some used car lots and compared prices. They paid cash and told me that my car would be a quick sale. I was happy for them. I got a new cell phone and a new cell phone plan from a different carrier and canceled my phone from our family plan. I can't recall my new phone number. Maybe I'll send it to you sometime. You'll be happy to know that I decided not to divorce your cheating back. I don't care about divorce as I never plan to get remarried. I did use some of the money from the house car sales to hire a private investigator in Colombia to get some incriminating audio and photos of you and the good doctor. Maybe they should call the program Doctors Without Morals. Speaking of your cheating back, I never knew you were into such depravity. I sure hope you rinsed your mouth with plenty of mouthwash. I didn't think that I should be the only one to know of your shenanigans, so I shared a copy of the private investigator report and the photos with the HR department at your hospital. On Friday, while you and Dr. Trey were in the air flying home, I spoke to a really nice lady, Ms. Washington, who is the HR manager at the hospital. She couldn't believe my story and seemed quite upset. I told her that I planned to sue the hospital for failing to enforce the moralities clause in the employment agreements and thereby ruining my marriage. I told Ms. Washington that I would have a courier deliver her copies of the enclosed photos and the private investigator report bright and early Monday morning. I also told her that I would enclose a short, signed contract in her package whereby I would agree to hold the hospital harmless for your extracurricular activities if they agreed to terminate the employment of you and the good doctor for cause, and further agreed to not provide either of you with good references for future employment elsewhere. She sounded very interested in having the hospital avoid liability, as it would hurt their reputation as well as their bank account. I think your first day back on Monday should be really interesting. Just like you didn't tell me that we now have an open relationship before you went off for your 6-week tryst with Doc Smarty Pants, I failed to tell you that I always wanted to roam the open roads of this great country before I get too old to do so. I plan on having an extended driving vacation. It will take at least a year, likely much longer, to see everything on my bucket list. I'm renting a nice RV from a buddy of mine from the service, so don't try to find me from state registrations, as the vehicle isn't even in my name. Speaking of RV life, boy did I have to downsize to make this work. I just kept the bare minimum and packed the RV. I got rid of everything else. I might have called you to see if there was anything you wanted to keep, but I didn't want to disturb you. The one time I called you in Colombia, you two lovebirds seemed quite annoyed at me, so I didn't want to call again and spoil the mood. I sold all of the furniture and my tools, donated some of my clothes and all of your clothes, and had a little bon voyage bonfire to burn any remaining remembrances. These remembrances include our wedding photos, your wedding dress, and photos of the two of us. I did keep the photos of the kids growing up. Who knew burning photos made so much smoke? Ralph from next door came over to make sure everything was okay when he saw the smoke coming from the backyard. I told him I was having a little bonfire, just once if you don't mind. He didn't mind at all. Thankfully, now that we've got an open relationship, I won't have to pass up female companionship while on my travels. Good thing the military taught me to stay in shape. From Leslie's comments, I think I'll still be able to attract the ladies. I told the kids about your affairs and that I was going on an extended vacation. They were sad but understood my position. They asked for updates and photos from my travels, and I told them I'd keep them posted so long as they don't share my new phone number with you. They agreed. Don't worry, though. I told them I'd call you just as frequently and at least as many times as you called me while you were in Colombia with Dr. Trey. Think I forgot to tell them that that number was 0. I'm taking my extended vacation starting the day you get back. Don't worry, I plan on taking my extended solo vacation just once if you don't mind. I'm sure traveling will be expensive, so I pocketed the money from the sales of the house and cars, as well as the money I got after emptying our bank accounts. I left your retirement account in place for you, but cashed out of my retirement account and paid the early withdrawal penalty. This open relationship stuff sure is eye-opening. I'll understand if you get tired of it and want to permanently separate, maybe to marry the good doctor. Trey, you are free to divorce me on grounds of abandonment since I'm sure I'll be gone for at least a year. I won't contest the divorce, nor will I change the grounds to infidelity. I've already got everything I need out of our marriage. 2 wonderful kids, some decent memories, and a pile of cash. Of course, I also have digital copies of the photos taken by the private investigators in Colombia. I've already shared them with our family, friends, and co-workers, so they don't think I ran off for no good reason. I sent a few choice photos to each email in both of our email contact lists, and I let everyone know that I would be on an extended solo vacation traversing the country. I thoughtfully CC'd you on the email, so you can see what I shared the next time you log into your email account. Finally, for some dumb reason, I was feeling a bit generous when I put this letter together and got you a $500 Visa gift card that is also in the smaller envelope. I hope you appreciate the gesture. This letter is likely the last correspondence you'll receive from me, so I'm giving it to you just once if you don't mind. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.